Hello, everyone. My name is Victor. I am the Occult Technician, and this is Mind War, Season 4, Episode 10.
Mind War is sponsored by Victory Work Apparel. Use promo code Mind War. Join the Mind War today. Enlist at patreon.com/mindwar. Now back to the show.
Welcome back to Mind War, folks. I appreciate you being here. We have a lot to cover today, so let's get started. Folks, we're going to jump right back into where we left off in the book Far Journeys by author Dr. Robert Monroe. We are going to be going through appendice number 1. I think this is great. These are frequently asked questions about the out-of-body experience. And so I believe these are people who maybe went through the Gateway program at the Monroe Institute, or people who are doing it on their own, and they're asking Dr. Monroe questions. So there's some great material in here, so let's see what we have. Okay, number 1. How do you know it isn't just a type of dreaming? Okay. It says most individuals do dismiss the experience when they encounter it as nothing more than a vivid dream. At most, it may be categorized by some as what it is identified as a lucid dream. In the latter, the dreamer is apparently aware that he is dreaming and can control the content of his dream, even to the point of changing the event, the participants, and the outcome. So many of you have probably heard of lucid dreaming before. I believe lucid dreaming is what we experience when we go to locale 2, that dream state where we do have control over things and we can change them and manipulate them. But now, he says, Dr. Monroe says, in the out-of-body experience, the individual is near totally conscious, as our civilization defines the state. Most, if not all, of our physical sensory perception is replicated. You can see, hear, and touch. The weakest seem to be smell and taste. Your perspective is from a position outside your physical body, near or distant. In a near state, it is usually from a location impossible for you to be with your physical body, such as floating against the ceiling. In far locations that could be in Paris, when you know you are in New York physically, you can observe events taking place, but you cannot change or significantly affect them. You can verify the authenticity of such events subsequently if you desire. You cannot participate to any major degree in these physical activity because you are not physical. It is the extreme reality of the out-of-body experience that sets it apart from a dream. It is as real as any physical life experience. So again, he's talking directly about the out-of-body experience where you're visiting locations in locale 1, the here and now, where you create your spirit body, you leave your physical body, and then you explore your town. You visit family and friends wherever they may be on the planet, right? This is what he's talking about, where you can't interact with them, you can't participate, you can't change anything. That happens in locale 2, again, that dream state where it's more like a virtual reality or a holodeck from Star Trek, right? Where you can interact with things and change them. But I like where he says it is as real as any physical life experience. And you will feel that and experience it when you listen to the tapes. The next question. Can anyone go out of body? Several studies made during the past 10 years indicate that some 25% of adult humans remember having at least one spontaneous out-of-body experience. Many were unaware of what had happened to them until the phenomenon was described to them. As stated earlier, we take the position that everyone goes into the out-of-body state during the delta or deep sleep state as a natural process and in varying degrees. Therefore, one step may be to begin to remember the out-of-body experience patterns you have or are performing each night when you sleep. Further, your specific physiological and or philosophical preparation, we believe that anyone can indeed consciously move into out-of-body states. So again, he says that everybody has an out-of-body experience when they go into the delta or deep sleep state. That takes us all the way back to Mind War Season 1 where we read from the book Mind War by Lieutenant Colonel Michael Aguino, and he described to us the different states of being, alpha, beta, and delta states of sleep and consciousness, right? He says, and again, once we philosophically and psychologically prepare ourselves and remember the process that we go through every night when we go to sleep, because remember, that was one of the tapes. He was saying when we explore explore sleep, tape 1-5, he tells us you're now going to remember the process that you do every night as you fall to sleep and have your out-of-body experience, right? So we prepare for it. The next question, will deliberately going out of body hurt you? Could you die from it? After 25 years of investigation as well as personal exploration, there is no evidence to support either possibility. There is no doubt as to the emotional impact upon discovering the reality of the out-of-body state. The major adjustment of one's belief systems is more traumatic and must be dealt with carefully. Psychologically, there seems to be no, or physiologically, there seems to be no effect, including any depletion of energy. So again, you will be affected emotionally. You're going to deal with changes in your belief systems, these fundamental changes, and you have to be prepared for that, because if you're not, they could be traumatic. You know, you're breaking that cycle of depending on these old philosophies, religions, belief systems, politics, whatever it may be. Those things are going to be broken when you listen to the tapes. And again, it can be quite dramatic because so many of us rely so heavily on them to give us purpose. We think to create who we are. We label ourselves based on these things. All of that stuff can be set aside when we find who we truly are. The next question, do drugs or alcohol help or bring on an out-of-body experience? Interesting. There is some data to indicate that hallucinogens may be producing an uncontrolled out-of-body experience. The drug experience in and of itself has not been studied in depth as to this possibility. Alcohol as a depressant tends to inhibit a conscious out-of-body experience, or at least the memory thereof. There is some support to the concept that anesthetics are no more than chemical triggers to produce a deep out-of-body state of unconsciousness. Okay, so hallucinogens, we'll start there. Like psilocybin, low dose, that's what I've talked about so many times. These are what I call the enhancements. I can't say it any other way than, it's 10, 100, 1,000 times more real. The experience is just catapulted into completely different levels when I use psilocybin along with the tapes. The tapes themselves are still amazing, but even if you just add low doses of THC or, like I said, low doses of psilocybin, they really enhance the experiment or the experience. Next, with alcohol, okay, so he says alcohol is going to reduce your ability to even get into the out-of-body experience. And if you do, you're probably not going to remember it. Alcohol is a big negative. And then I thought this was interesting, the idea of anesthesia, like when you go into surgery. That's where we hear so many stories of the out-of-body experience. Oh, I was floating above the operating table, looking down, watching the surgery. We hear people give great detail about what's going on in the operating table and in the room at the time, when they should really have no idea what's happening because they're supposed to be asleep. Next question. Is the out-of-body experience similar to the near-death experience that have been written about in several recent books? It is very similar, more pointedly, with allowances for cultural connotation and uncontrolled reaction due to the high-stress ambience of the moment. They appear to be one and the same. Most, if not all, of the elements found in the near-death reports have been replicated repeatedly with various laboratory subjects using the hemi-sync process. The difference lies in the perception of the events and situations encountered. Without anxiety and stress, armed with objective observation, another perspective of the same state condition is forthcoming. Folks, Dr. Monroe is telling us right here that when people talk about having near-death experiences, we are having the exact same state. We are going into the same state. We're having the same experiences they are. The issue with a near-death experience, it's often traumatic because some type of violence or an accident or something occurring. So you're scared and you're high stress and there's high anxiety. You weren't prepared to have this near-death experience, right? But we do. We go into it consciously with preparation. But he's saying that they are one and the same, the exact same thing. That is so profound, right? Because everybody knows what a near-death experience is. Most people know about that story or have heard some type of story about it. Less people know about the out-of-body experience. Some people may have heard about that, but even less like us have purposely, consciously prepared for it and achieved it. It's just an amazing question, amazing revelation there. Question: are such things as weather conditions, moon phase, or lying north-south important in achieving the out-of-body experience? He says here that they don't really have any evidence of it. They said that some of the chambers that they created, these booths that they created at the Institute, that they listened to the tapes in, because they could design it, they just did it north and south. There may be some magnetic fields from the earth that may react or interact with us when we're having an out-of-body experience. But he said that there isn't enough data to conclude it. He doesn't say anything about moon phases. Okay, for those of you who follow along with my spiritual work, you know that I listen to the Gateway Experience tapes in combination with my spiritual practices, and I do those on the new moon and the full moon. So basically every 2 weeks I'm listening to the tapes. And the reason that this is important, not just because of the spiritual aspect, you can take that or leave it for what it is, because you're going to add your own spirituality to the tapes, right? But this is just what I do. But the importance of this kind of every 2 weeks, is scheduling. So I saw a comment underneath another video that was talking about the Gateway Experience, and they asked the creator of that video, they said, this person said, listen, I've tried to listen to the tapes, but I often find myself, forgetting about them or not giving them the priority that I need, and that I often fall short and I never really make it through a full wave, right? That's the importance of adding something to the tapes, okay? That's why I add my spirituality to the tapes. That's why I have made commitments and deals with the spirits that I work with that I would do this, okay? I have made deals with them, okay? We as magicians, we as mind warriors, we demand the magician, the magic from the spirits, okay? But they require the bodies. They can't do the work but through us, okay? We're going to learn more about this in the spiritual side when we get into future seasons. But this is the beauty of it. You have to commit to something, okay? And sometimes committing to the tapes themselves aren't enough. And that's where I found adding the scientific side of the Gateway Experience tapes with the spiritual practices. That is a solemnity, a combination of two different types of supernatural processes, right? And they rely on each other. You have to make that commitment. And sometimes the commitment can't just be to the tapes or to yourself. It has to be to a third party. Next question. If I leave my body temporarily, can someone else get in while I'm gone? If your premise is correct, there is no more possibility of this taking place than there would be during normal sleep. If there could be statistics worked on such possibility, the odds against an occurrence of this sort are far greater than those of your being killed in an auto accident during the coming year. Over the past 15 years working with laboratory subjects and program participants, there have been no incidents that remotely could be construed as possession or something destructive or uncontrollable. So none of their observations in the laboratory, they've never said anyone has become possessed, okay? Possession, we often think about having a spirit come into the physical body and take complete control, okay? Again, with the spiritual work that I've done, we'll get into this more in future seasons. I have had not necessarily possessions by the spirits that I work with, but more of welcoming them in as an addition. Something has been added to me, okay? Not taken over. I haven't been possessed by any type of spirit or anything like that, but they add to me. I welcome them in. It's very different. Next, in your previous book, you gave an angle method for getting out of your body, but I can't make it work for me. Is there something I am not doing right? The method described was a very early technique that worked at the time. We have since discovered that many other vital factors that are involved in the process. Also, we currently use other techniques that are easier to understand and perform. Briefly put, it is not quite as simple as envisioned earlier. So in early books, he talked about an angle. For us now, some of the new tools that they ended up developing was like the rolling method, where we roll to the right, and these are ways to get into the out-of-body experience. Next question. What does it mean when you get strange aches and pains in your head and various parts of your body when you try to go out of body? I don't know that I've ever had anything strange. Any of the aches and pains that I've had, again, are part of my, chronic illness or just joint pain and things like that from just being a ruffian my whole life. Generally, it infers unconscious anxieties and concerns that must be sought out and addressed before you can go on to the out-of-body state. If you are able to get behind or perceive the reason for each one at the level they exist, then release the emotion attached. The physical signals will disappear. So in our living body map tape, maybe that's one where you're going to, again, look where the physical pain is in the mirror when you're looking at yourself and you're seeing it lighting up in different colors. You see where that colors are dim or flickering, and you heal them with your energy toolbar or your magic wand. And then again, right behind that, we talk about that emotional self that is right beyond the physical self in the mirror. And we sometimes have to look and say, oh, this physical issue that we're feeling when we're trying to get into the out-of-body state is actually an emotional issue. Remember, even in the last episode, we talked a lot about finding the source of our emotional issues, whatever it might be, the emotional pain, if this is what we're talking about here. But getting to the source to where that we can then make that change to our aristos. Next question. Can you get back into the wrong physical body by mistake? Can implies the ability for such incident to take place. It can happen, as it did to me in the early days. How often is another matter. In our current civilization, there are no means to understand it, possibly even on a speculative basis. It has never happened to our laboratory subjects or those who have trained with us. We use a simple homing device to ensure return to your physical body, to return neatly and in a hurry. All you need do is to think of one part of your physical body, such as the big toe, and attempt to move or wiggle it. This brings prompt results. Because there is no data and the wrong body incident has occurred to me, it does presume that possibly that it might happen with an untrained novice. If that is your possibility, remember the wiggle big toe signal. It will save much fear and worry. Okay. So before he just said, can I leave my body temporarily? Can someone else get in it? And he said, no, they haven't seen that in the laboratory. But in this question is, can you get back into the wrong physical body? And Monroe says, yes, he's done it. Okay, so we got two different answers there. That's very interesting. One important thing, though, is he does say, make sure that you have a trigger to get back into the physical body. I like the trigger finger. Just he's talking about the toe, but I think the trigger finger is even better. Just remember, wiggle your finger if you are scared or worried or anything like that. All you have to do is move one part of your physical body, and you will be back into your body in an instant. And this works for your nightmares too, folks. When you are afraid, you're having a nightmare, all you got to do is wiggle that finger and you will wake up out of it, okay? But more importantly, can we do this? That's very interesting. It makes me think of sci-fi movies, right? Or cartoons where someone's spirit is transferred from one body to the other. Maybe as I get older and this physical body starts to deteriorate and disappear, maybe I'll have to start exploring on trying to find a newer one. Next question. What about animals in the out-of-body state? Have you met any? Could you communicate with them? Well, I'll start by saying Leo, my Boston Terrier, my best buddy, he lays next to me every time I go through my Gateway Experience tapes. He's always there with me, not only physically, but spiritually as well. The only ones recognizable to me have been domestic cats, which have been a part of our household family. They evidently have at least a second body too, which can be perceived if they are asleep when you are out of body and you go to investigate. Of recent interest to me during the departure phase, I encountered 3 cats just outside, sitting relaxed and observant. In greeting them, I was surprised to find they were the 3 of our favorite cats who had died physically during the past 3 years. In retrospect, why was I surprised? I didn't know. Okay, well, he has cats. That's interesting. For all you cat lovers out there, that might be music to your ears. I like that. Next question. Will your sounds on your audio cassettes or those on any other sound cassette induce the out-of-body state? Okay, so again, this book was written in the 80s. They're talking about the audio cassettes, so that's funny. It says here, it would be very rare if at all. Certain other factors must be approached first, such as the fear barrier, reprisal of belief systems, among others. It is the extreme exception that balance has been reached sufficiently to move that easily into the out-of-body state. So he's saying here, the tapes alone aren't going to allow you to get into the out-of-body state. You have to get past the fear of it. We've talked about that before. There is no fear here in the mind war. But there are so many cowards out there. Those are going to be the people coming against us, not believing what we're doing here. They are cowards. They've never experienced the tapes. They've never experienced them with the psilocybin enhancements. Their opinion is worth nothing. I don't care how smart and amazing these people think they are. If they are fearful cowards and they won't even try it, then their opinion is nil and zero. But you also have to get past your belief systems. So if your religion and your belief systems is stopping you from moving forward with the tapes and experiencing them yourselves, because again, I'm not here to convince you of Dr. Monroe's experiences. I'm not here to convince you of my experiences. I'm here to convince you to have your own experiences. And if your religion or your fear or your belief system is stopping you from doing it, you're a coward, and your opinion doesn't matter here in the mind war. You're null and void. You're a non-player. You're a non-player character. NPC, we don't care about you. You have no value. Next question. What about flying dreams? Is this an out-of-body experience? We generally recognize that the flying dream, with or without an aircraft, is a rationalization of the out-of-body experience, which is unacceptable to the belief system of the conscious mind. Later data suggests that the dream is getting out of your car and performing some act falls into a similar category. Have you ever dreamed that you forgot where you parked your car? Also, the falling dream often becomes re-entry into the physical when practiced in slow motion. Okay, so the flying dream, it can be a sort of representation of having the out-of-body experience. Now, I have one dream from when I was younger that is so clear a flying dream, okay? I was a young kid. Next to my parents' house was an empty field. There's a home there now. But I used to run and play in that field all the time. The dream that I had was so realistic. I was just a kid running through the field, and all of a sudden I just willed myself to fly. It felt so real. I mean, even to this day, this dream was 30 years ago or longer, right? I can see it clearly, 4K in my mind today in this memory. I can feel myself flying. It was so real. And it does feel a lot like the out-of-body experience. And here's why. You will yourself out of the body. Remember, I talked a lot about like, one of the ways to detach from your body is think about when your leg has fallen asleep. You're sitting in a weird position or whatever, your legs fall asleep and you can't move them. But in your mind, you still try to move them, right? That's what you're going to do when you're having the out-of-body experience or trying to get into the OBE, right? You're going to, again, your body is going to be paralyzed with the GABA-glycine, that temporary paralyzing chemical that flows through our body naturally as we sleep. But you're still going to attempt to move your legs, move your arms. And when you do, that's when your spirit body is produced. Next question. How is remote viewing different from an out-of-body experience? Remote viewing, or the ability to see events taking place at another physical location, employs a trained state of consciousness that is effective while still very much within the physical body. Usually only one form of perception is utilized, which translates as visual. In the out-of-body state, there is no awareness of the physical because you are away from it. Your perception, other than visual, is invariably present. There are other differences, but these are the basics. Again, remote viewing, I believe that we did that from Focus 10, from our sleep dojo, right? We created our energy toolbar, we turned it into a tube, we connected it to one end of our consciousness and moved the other end out far to where our friends or family members were that we were trying to remote view. And then we visually saw what was going on through the tube, almost like a telescope, right? It's very different than actually creating your spirit body, leaving it, and then traveling, okay? Two very different tools, different phenomenon. Next question. Can an out-of-body experience be induced by hypnosis? There are a number of reports that this has taken place, and it may be possible. We have no direct experience with it. The weakness of this technique comes from our perspective lies in the fact that the out-of-body individual is not in control of the activity, which seems to be quite important in the process. Now, this must have been written before the Gateway Experience tapes have been, maybe not necessarily created, because we do talk about audio cassettes a few questions before, but the tapes, the way that we know them today, okay? Because it is 100% acknowledged that hypnosis is used in the Gateway program, okay? Counting from 1 to 10, this is hypnosis. Getting into the body asleep, mind awake, that's what hypnosis is. Hypnosis is absolutely fundamental to the out-of-body experience. It's fundamental to the Gateway Experience tapes. And it's something that all of you should be learning more. I hope to dive deeper into this subject in the future, but we should all be learning about hypnosis. Not only how to do it in tapes, but how to do it to our victims. I mean, the people that we interact with daily, right? Using hypnosis in our language, in our actions, how we speak and act and work with others in order to manipulate, work with them and get them to achieve the things that we need from them, right? Next question. When you find yourself out of body while still performing a physical act such as driving a car, what should you do? How can you control it? Whoa, okay, this person's saying they had an out-of-body experience while driving their car. Sounds very dangerous. Be very careful with this. Don't listen to these tapes while you're driving. That's crazy. Get back as fast as you can. Use the quick return method described earlier. This has not happened to me personally, but I understand it does occur infrequently. So again, use that trigger finger. Really kind of what you could think about. You're on that long drive. It's nighttime. You're really tired. And your mind starts to wander, right? You're still driving. You're still focused. But now your mind is wandering. It's almost getting to locale 2 because you're just off thinking about other stuff. Your eyes are still open, you're still physically moving, but it almost feels like you've left the body because you're not thinking about what your body's doing. So use that trigger, get back to your body. Next question. Is it easier to go to a place or a person while in the out of body? Usually to a person. Easiest to someone who is close to you emotionally. There are some who can go to places, but it requires a specific address. Okay. So most of the times that I've, traveled or done remote viewing, it was of friends and family, very strong emotional ties. But at the same time, there are places that I went to or remote viewed. I knew the people that might be there. I wasn't 100% because the people come and go in this location that I went to view, but I knew people were there, so that was very important. There is definitely an attraction there that allows this to occur. Next question. If you meet a being while out of body, how can you tell if it is malevolent or benevolent? Ooh. An unqualified reply to this one is difficult. Often what is perceived as vicious or evil is simply a very impersonal energy you have encountered with your interpreted as aimed at you personally. A sudden undertow at the beach may seem frightening and deadly, and it is your fear that the unknown potential of it that makes it so. The undertow itself doesn't know you exist and cares less. These can be avoided if you consciously limit your input frequency, as it were, allowing only those on your wavelength to communicate and or make contact with you. At best, if there is a question, pat it on the shoulder and tell it to go home. At worst, go back to your physical and regroup. Otherwise, say hello and enter into some form of communication. So again, if you are coming across entities in the out-of-body state, and you find some of them to be maybe a little distant from you, they don't communicate, maybe they seem a little scary to you, that's what your resonant energy balloon is for. You're going to allow things into your balloon that are welcoming and want to work with you, and you can block out other things that don't. Either way, don't be scared. Again, this is all in your imagination. There is no fear here in the mind war. Explore it, tap it on the shoulder, see what it is. Next question. Can one go forward and backward in time while having an out-of-body experience? Very much so, because the true out-of-body is not a time-space state or condition. Interesting. Now he's telling us that we can time travel. We are coming to the end of the second book. We're halfway through the Gateway Experience tapes, and now Monroe is telling us we can time travel. It is not as productive as one would imagine for several complex reasons. Most important is to use a strong home signal to get back to your original start point. Such signals must include not only place but time. Practice near time runs before tackling the long ones. Okay, this is interesting. I don't know that I've ever tried to travel in time at all, but I look forward to it. I think that's something I'm going to add to my list and see if that occurs while I'm in the out-of-body state. Next question. What is my form while out of body? Think of your second or immediate non-physical body as much like gelatin that has been removed from a mold. Again, I talked about it like plasma, electrified plasma, almost like a jellyfish, right? It remembers the human form and thus is near identical. The longer one is separated from the physical, the weaker the memory becomes and less reinforced. So again, in one of the recent tapes, we talked about having the out-of-body experience, and I was called back to return to the physical body, and I almost forgot what it meant to be in the physical body. It felt so wonderful being out of it. In the state of being that I was in, I just forgot what it meant to be physical, and it was almost a little sense of disappointment when I had to return. Time space also seems to be a factor. The farther away from the physical such memory or its effectiveness becomes less. If left to its own devices, you may become a ball, a teardrop, a small cloud, or just a blob. As all of this can be bypassed by slipping out of the second body immediately after separation and becoming clear, undiluted energy. You can always grow a hand and arm if you need one. So again, this idea of creating that second state, that spirit body, the one that feels like plasma, electrified plasma, feels like a jellyfish, that's your spirit body. But Monroe is then saying, again, you can leave that body as well and just be that energy, that energy source that's the deepest part of us, that really is our spirit or soul. You can leave even the second state body. Next question. What about the reincarnation process? Are physical lifetimes sequential, simultaneous, or what? First, they are not sequential in time. They may indeed be simultaneous. It is a question of who is doing the perceiving. Okay, so again, if there is reincarnation, they don't have to be simultaneous. You don't die from one body and then just go right into the next, I think is what he's saying. That's sequential. And they may also be simultaneous. You may be in multiple bodies at one time. I don't know. I'm still, this whole reincarnation thing, I think it's more of an analogy for dealing with real life, dealing with the same issues over and over and over again until we, grow out of them, until we conquer our fears, conquer our addictions, whatever it may be. We handle them and we progress out of them. That is what I believe reincarnation really is. It's in the here and now. You have one life to live. This is the only one you get. We're not playing games with it. We're going to learn lessons till the very bitter end. Next question. Why would super beings, as you describe, need technology? So again, he's described this kind of all-knowing database of knowledge of all human existence, time and space. Everything in the universe is known. Some call it God, some call it the universe, a spirit, whatever it may be. MZOO calls it a technology. I like that. As a past professional information technology specialist, I think this is a great way to describe it. It's just a form of technology that we don't quite as humans understand how to harness. That's why we do the program. That's why we're doing all this work. It's not only self-help, but it's also humanity help. We are trying to learn, even if all of us just learn one little new piece to the puzzle of what this type of technology is. I mean, that's amazing. So again, why would super beings, as you described, need technology? MZOO's answer is they don't. Putting their activities and ability within the context appears to be one possible way for our left-brained culture to begin to understand what they are doing. Such technology is as natural to them as our automatic system in us. We don't know about our gastrointestinal tract, our circulation system, or our lungs as technology. We just use them without conscious effort, although we now understand much of the technology involved. Their technology is much the same, relatively, except that they deliberately apply it and control it. So number one, he uses the word technology in order to get us to understand it and to think about it in a way that we can understand it, right? He says that it's often like our physical body. Our body is constantly running. It is a technology, and we don't have to think about our heart beating or our stomach digesting our food. It just does it for us. Our brain is working all of those processes behind the scenes without us consciously needing it. And he says that these super beings, these entities, they learn how to control this technology, right? The next question. Is our human technology a result of communication with such super beings? We are getting into some really occult questions here, folks. I mean, if you go and do some research, I've only scratched the surface on this, but when you do research about nuclear weapons, the creation of computer networks, the creation of CERN, all of these massive technologies that have taken over our life, these things, I call them the beast, right? All of these things, they have esoteric and occult beginnings. These scientists back in the 50s, you hear these stories, you look at them, they're buttoned up in their white lab coats and their little black glasses, right? And their slicked back hair. They got their little notebooks that they're writing in. But man, a lot of those projects and stuff, they started with occult rituals. Some people say, satanic and evil rituals or whatever. I don't know about how evil or satanic they may have been. I think what those gentlemen and ladies were doing is some of the same work that we do here. Getting into different states of being and allowing information into our mind. Again, we ask the questions and put it out into the universe, but the answer was already inside of us. These scientists were thinking about technology. How can we create it? You know that somebody looked at a television one day and said, I want to be able to control it. I want to be able to do something more with it than just turn the channel. So how do we do that? And maybe they had practical ideas, but they run into issues. So what do? They go into the out-of-body state. They get themselves into a mindset where they can find the solutions for it, right? Let's see. Is our human technology a result of communication with such super beings? There is much to support this premise, especially when key figures and events in human history are objectively studied with this prospect as an alternative to our present belief system. He had just said it Key figures and events in history are the result of this type of work, okay? I'm telling you. This is what you've all been asking for. These are the answers that have been hidden. It's why I am the occult technician. I'm taking these hidden technologies, I am learning them the best that I can, and I'm trying to share with all of you the things that I've learned, okay? And again, I didn't create any of this stuff. I'm sharing it with you from someone else's book. But these are questions that I see so many people asking. And now we're finding those answers. The next question. Do certain types of food, coffee, smoking, sugar, etc. aid or inhibit the out-of-body state? There is no direct correlation either way based solely upon those laboratory subjects and program participants active in the Institute. We are not aware of any reliable in-depth studies on the matter. Moderation may be the common factor, if any. Okay. Again, very important. Anything that is going on with your physical body that is going to anchor you to it. Pain, that's one that I've dealt with. Cold is another big one. Make sure you're not too cold when you're listening to the tapes. That'll anchor you. I do find that it's more difficult to remember what happened when you are very tired, because sometimes the tapes can lull you to sleep. I think being awake for them is important. But I think if you just went into them fully caffeinated, you might have some issues because, again, I have the caffeine through tea or coffee, but then I'm also taking the psilocybin, which helps mellow you out, taking the THC, which helps mellow me out and bring me into that very relaxed state, okay? So I think it is very important what we're putting into our bodies before we do the tapes. Again, you don't want to be overly full and things like that. I think that does play a big factor. Next question. What would you say is the nature of good and evil? Interesting question. Dr. Monroe says, they exist only in the mind of the perceiver due to ignorance and lack of understanding, plus an immersed viewpoint. Okay. Defining what good and evil is, I think so often in today's culture we lose focus on what really is important to be defined as good and evil. I think people overdo it. I think they push it far beyond this idea of describing things as good and evil. They push it so far beyond what it really is that it almost doesn't matter anymore today. I think that's kind of one of the psyops that's going on in the world today, is just they throw so much at us and it's all contradictory. It's a way for us to just not care either way anymore. I think we need to get away from that. I think there are specific things that we can say, oh, this is good and this is evil. They're natural, they're instinctual in us. And I think if we lower the rhetoric to that very first level, that instinctual good and evil, that's the place to live, man. I don't care about all this other nonsense. I don't care about your religion and your culture and your society and all the bullshit rules and laws and all that stuff that you make up about what's good and evil. All of that's used to control people. What I'm talking about is getting to that instinctual level of what is good and evil. Someone trying to harm your child is evil, and you're going to attack and defend against that. And that is good, right? Those are instinctual, very easy. What is good and evil based upon our need for survival? Those are easy ways to define it. So let's start back there, okay? And the next question. Can one live two lives simultaneously relative to time? This question has been asked of our non-physical friends who report that it is not only possible but does take place frequently. We have no further information about it, how or why it occurs, except that I personally was given the name and location of a second life I am living. but I have not had the time or the courage to verify it if possible. Okay, so are we living other lives simultaneously? I don't know, man. I just don't believe that stuff. It goes too far beyond just the basics, right? Again, I'm not necessarily on board with this idea of reincarnation, of the current spirit that we truly are, the soul that we are in each one of us. It's individual and completely distinct from the cloud that we came from the source that we came from. We are individual and unique, and that's important. And I don't like the idea that our soul is then just thrown into another body. I believe that our soul, our spirit, each time after death, we return right back to that source. We are that drop of water put right back into the bucket. You'll never be able to pull that that drop of water back out again. Okay? We go back to the source. The source, that cloud, it might create a new raindrop, but it's going to be part of the whole that comes back to a new body. And as the whole, we go on to experience it. Maybe there's a reincarnation in that, but each of us as individuals are unique, special, important. Okay? That's, again, what I don't like about this reincarnation idea. It kind of lessens the importance of the individual. And I think that's dangerous. I don't think it's true, and I think it's something to move away from. All of us are individuals. We're all special and unique, and that's something to hold on to. The final question. Have your religious beliefs changed as a result of your out-of-body activities? And the answer that Dr. Monroe gives is yes. And my guess is that your answer will be the same to that question and to so many more. That was Appendice 1 from the book Far Journeys. The next one's very interesting. We'll cover that in the next episode. We're almost done with this book, folks. We are so close. And we are going to be doing a deep dive into Wave 4 Adventure, Tape 4, Nonverbal Communication 1, after a word from our sponsor.
Mind War is sponsored by Victory Work Apparel. Use promo code Mind War.
Welcome back, folks. We're going to do a deep dive into Wave 4 Adventure, Tape 4, Nonverbal Communication 1. Folks, I did this tape last night, again with the enhancements of psilocybin. This was the B+ strain. I've only used B+ one other times. It's very intense, and this tape was very intense. When I read through the transcripts of the tape prior to listening, I thought, oh, this one's going to be kind of boring. I remembered listening to it in the past when I went through the tapes the first time. Ooh, was I wrong? Very interesting. Okay. So let's start here. It says, remember the purpose of this exercise, and begin your preparation process now. Okay, so I love how Dr. Monroe says, remember the purpose. Why are we here today? What are we doing? He says, now in Focus 10, here is your first exercise in nonverbal communication. Nonverbal communication is the system of transmitting and receiving total information without words, either written or spoken. No words, instead pictures, form, movement, color, feeling, radiated energy, vibration, emotion, all in the entirety of your mind, of you. To demonstrate the speed, power, and accuracy of nonverbal communication once it is achieved, I want you to translate this word into a picture, a thought in your mind. And he's going to say a word. Now, I'm not going to spoil any of the words that Monroe says here, because I don't want to affect what you're going to think and see. Okay. So let's say he used the word button. I want you to visualize the word button in your mind right now. Okay. And so you might have one of a couple of different options. One of the buttons that you might have thought of is a button on your clothes, right? On your shirt. Or another button might be on a computer or almost like a doorbell where you're pushing a button. Those are two different types of buttons. And so he's kind of showing us that we could think about it in different ways. But then he goes on to say, more importantly, when nonverbal communication works properly, what you would have actually seen is Victor, the occult technician, buttoning his, black shirt from the top and, buttoning the top 3 button, right? So he's saying that you can add words to it, and this will bring an even clearer picture of nonverbal communication. So again, you don't just see one button or pushing a button, but you see someone actually buttoning their shirt. It's a deeper description, right? So it says, let's see. If the information had originated with nonverbal communication, you would have known exactly what the deeper description would have been. Okay. He goes on to say that is the purpose of this exercise and beginning steps into this universal form of communication. A universal form of communication. Very interesting. You are going to translate this verbal or word information into another form. First, your physical hand, the palm of your physical right hand. So just like we've done in the past, we have visualized our hands in front of us, whether it was feeding them energy, food, creating our energy toolbar. We had to use our spirit hands to do this. So the very first thing that he does is tell us to look at our hands, the top and the bottoms, the right one, then the left one, okay? And when he does, he says, look at your right hand, look at the palm, flip it over, look at the back, and now turn it off. So he'll say on, and you'll see it. You'll see it materialize, and you'll look at it. And then he says off, and then it's gone. Okay, so he uses the on and off triggers. Now, he goes through a whole list of words here. Again, I'm not going to spoil the words for you, right? But he goes through a whole list of words, saying them, turning them on, and turning them off. Now, this was a very different type of tape. He's talking to us quite a bit, but his voice is not crystal clear. Again, in a box. His voice sounds like in a box. It sounds almost like it's at a distance. In some ways, you're almost struggling to hear him, right? And he's saying on and off to these different words, and you're visualizing them in your imagination. You're seeing them appear before you, and then they're turning off. This is so important. This is the practice of imagination. This is one of the most important tools that we learn in the Gateway program, is to imagine things. It's so much more difficult than you think it is, especially when you're put to the test like this, okay? All of this is done in Focus 10, in the Sleep Dojo, that upside down world of stranger things, in the blackness. You see these things appearing. He goes through a whole list of about 20 different words. It's very interesting. Then he says, now move to Focus 12, your state of expanded awareness. I will join you there for the next step of your non-verbal communication exercise. So far, the tape, all that you've heard is the sound of waves. But now he adds this high-pitched tone. And it kind of starts at the bottom, and you hear it moving upwards. It's very low. I think he keeps these tones and these frequencies very low so it focuses our attention. We're kind of grasping to hear them. And as this tone moves upward in our stereo headphones, as it moves upward, it's now going back and forth across our perception. It's moving from one ear to the other, back and forth. And as it does, I'm getting goosebumps just thinking about this, okay? It's moving us further and further. It's clearing away anything that's in our way for our attention, our perception to be expanded far beyond our physical body. It is such an amazing feeling, so simple. It's such a simple description of what it really is, just the sound of waves in a low tone that is becoming more and more high-pitched and just moving back and forth in your stereo headphones. But again, in this state of mind with the psilocybin, it really expands your perception outside of your mind. He says, now in Focus 12, reach out with your conscious awareness and perceive any nonverbal communication that may be available. Not words, but other wider, total perception, pictures, movement, emotions, previously undetected feelings. Begin now. Okay. So again, this tape wasn't one that was huge on feeling, right? You weren't moving around in three dimensions. We weren't creating the spirit body. We weren't falling backwards or falling forwards. None of those type of things. We are in Focus 12, that expanded state of awareness. But what happened next was a real trip, man. It was just, I don't want to say shocking, but just very strange, okay? This was very dreamlike. And so as soon as he said to start, having this next form of nonverbal communication, here's what happened. It looked like I was in virtual reality, okay? And it looked like I was watching virtual reality or a video through one of those eyeball cameras, right? Or the fisheye cameras, or the fisheye lens, where you kind of see things in a rounded view. You often wear a GoPro on the top of your head, right? And so I looked down and I saw that I was standing on a black sanded beach, okay? And there were gray rocks in the sand. And I look out and I see the gray waves coming in and out. And now the waves, they almost look like that white energy that I talked about before with kind of the fractal patterns. Almost everything in this vision was made up of that white kind of color with the fractal patterns through it. But it wasn't bright white, it was very gray, the gray waves coming in and out. I look out into the sea and all I see is fog, dark, gray fog coming in. Very cold, very damp environment. I could feel all of it. Out in the water, out in the distance, I saw what are called stack formations. These are the kind of islands that are off on the beach that are really tall and often jagged. They don't look like islands that you would want to go and explore, but they just kind of, jut out from the water. I saw several of those, but I didn't see them with any type of detail, only blackness, okay? And now I don't mean that I saw rocks that were black. I saw it as pure black shadow. I couldn't make anything out on these islands except for kind of the silhouette, and it was just pure blackness. And so as I'm looking around, at first I'm very confused. I'm like, wait, is this what this is supposed to be? Is this what's going on? And what I quickly realize is, oh, this is why he had us doing all of those practice words. He was getting us into the state of mind where we are picturing things over and over again, right? And we're practicing our imagination. And then he says, go see what you're supposed to see. And this was it. And I realized, oh, this is what he was training us for, to just see. So now I'm standing there on the beach, the black sand, the gray rocks, the gray waves coming in and out, the gray fog so thick, and these kind of shadow islands out. And I started to look around and said, am I supposed to be seeing anything more? And out of the fog, a fleet of airplanes that looked like bombers, like military bombers, all made of black shadow, came through the fog and started to fly overhead. And then from the water, out of the fog, came the ships, the naval ships, black shadow ships coming up to the shore. Now, at first, I kind of recognized these of, oh, this is like a military, style scene that I'm watching here. It was very intense. And then, from far back in the fog, a massive black horse with a black rider, all complete shadow darkness. I couldn't see detail. It was only black shadow darkness. It was almost as if I could see through it. It was so dark. The only thing in the silhouette was where the fog would kind of meet it. It was almost expanding the darkness a little bit on the edges. And this giant horse with its rider rode over top of me, right? Not running me over, but it was so massive that it looked like it was coming from the heavens, above the planes, above the ships, above the sea, above all of us. And here, for as wild as that visual was, for as wild as it was to feel the dampness of the fog rolling in on me and the coldness on my feet, I heard the gallop of the horse. That was so intense, folks. It's one thing to visually see things. It's one thing to have a visual hallucination, okay? You can close your eyes and rub your eyes right now, and when you open them, you're going to see fractal colors and stuff. That is a visual hallucination. But to have a full, crystal clear auditory hallucination was so intense. I heard that horse galloping right over top of me. Now again, we can go back and listen to the tapes. There is no horse galloping in the tapes, but I heard it crystal clear. So intense. And as soon as he rode over me, Dr. Monroe didn't say off, but because we had this on and off training earlier in the tape, that's what happened. For as fast as the visual and everything occurred and how it just came on, how it was like I just opened my eyes and I was there on the beach, off, and it was over and it was gone back into the darkness. Now, it took just very momentarily before I moved into the next nonverbal communication. This one, also very intense. Very different, but very intense. And so now we're in the darkness. I see nothing. But all of a sudden I look down, and in front of me I see kind of like a ballast for a fence. You know, when a corner fence comes together, especially when it's made out of stucco in the wrought iron fence, right? Maybe it had an address or a light on top or something. And it started to appear, and it was at the end of this driveway. And again, I was kind of like, where am I? What is this? What is this that I'm seeing? It was a very well manicured lawn. This beautiful home started to appear in front of me, kind of in a tropical location. It was like a Spanish style contemporary home. It looked very new and beautiful, but it was kind of a lot of that stucco and tan, right? A huge driveway, and I found myself walking up the driveway. I opened up the front doors into this huge, like, I think 4A is what it's called, right? The huge beginning part of the home that led right into this giant living room with a fireplace and everything and a wall of windows. I walked through the home. I walked through the glass door out into the patio. There was a pool there. There was an ocean just beyond it, the beach and the ocean waves. Warm, sunny, beautiful, in color. Everything was crystal clear, 4K, beautiful color. And I just simply stood there and looked out into the ocean. And that was it. And it went off. And then Dr. Monroe calls us back and he says, "You will remember in great detail what you have perceived. You will be able to translate to words more easily this experience when you return to the full physical waking reality." That's what I saw. That was the nonverbal communication that I received. Two very different scenes, very dreamlike, crystal clear. The first one full of symbolism. I'm not quite sure what the symbolism means. It felt like it was about things that are far beyond my personal life. It may have been hinting towards world events, something like that. Very intense. Not scary. I wasn't scared in any way. It was more this excitement of like, wow, this is so clear. This is so amazing. I felt like I was wearing 3D goggles. It was so interesting. And then the second one, again, this totally different atmosphere, this totally different place, this beautiful home right on the beach, a huge estate, and just kind of walking through it and just feeling content, almost feeling the warmth of the sun on my body, hearing the waves as they crash on the beach. Very different experiences, two very different events, but all part of this nonverbal communication. So then Dr. Monroe, again, he says, hey, you're going to be able to explain it very clearly. And I think that I've done that here. I've never explained a dream more clearly in my life, right? It's exactly like what he said it would be. And the reason that I found this one to be so intense is I just wasn't quite prepared for it. Again, I thought of this more of that training session. I knew we were going to go through the words because I remember doing it before. And I thought it was going to be more just practice. But it was really eye-opening, and it was a really cool experience when he said, now get your own nonverbal communication. What is trying to be transmitted to you so that you can translate it to others? So that was my nonverbal communication, folks, from Wave 4 Adventure, Tape 4, Nonverbal Communication 1. Thank you for joining me for another great episode of the Mind War podcast. I appreciate you being here. And as always, folks, remember, harden your hearts and open your minds, because this is Mind War.